G'day and welcome to the Driver Able podcast. My name is Brad Williams, and normally on this podcast we have Ali Akbarian, but unfortunately he can't join us today. So I'm going this alone, but that's going to be okay because today we are talking about raising funds for vehicles for people that can't afford it to have modifications installed. We're going to be talking with Peter White, who is the founder of the Make Me Mobile charity. The Make Me Mobile charity has a vision to raise money so they can fund wheelchair accessible vehicles for NDIS clients in Australia that need one but don't have the financial resources to purchase their own vehicle. So I can't wait to get stuck into this talk, and it's a big issue that's happening around the place where people need a vehicle but they can't afford the base vehicle to put the modifications in. So we think this is a great initiative because the NDIS have these strong parameters and guidelines to meet vehicle mods and funding those, and not everybody can afford those cars. So let's get this interview underway and we'll find out more about the Make Me Mobile charity.
You get to listen to two of Australia's leading professionals in the area of driving and community mobility for people with disabilities. In each episode, they interview drivers, carers, and industry experts and share the insider's guide to driving with a disability. Here are your hosts, Brad and Ali.
G'day everyone, I'm really excited to get into today's interview, but before we get started, we just want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. This show takes a lot of time and a lot of money to put together, and we just want to say a massive thanks to our sponsors for helping you bring this podcast to you today. And today we've got Peter, not Lachlan, if you're watching this on YouTube, we've got Peter White joining us. G'day, Peter. How you going?
I'm good, thanks.
That's excellent. Can we start by asking you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and a bit about the Make Me Mobile charity and your role within the charity?
Yeah. So I'm a married parent of two children. My wife's name is Anita. I've got a son who's 23 and a daughter who's 19.
Mm-hmm.
And when Lachlan was about 5, he was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of really tore our hearts out because we sort of had an idea of what the disease was and what it would mean, but
For our listeners, can you encapsulate it real quickly for us? What's
Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a neurological disease that basically all your muscles. When you go to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
how the day after you're very sore.
Yeah.
That's your body repairing the muscles. Muscular dystrophy. They don't have dystrophin in their genetic makeup,
Mm-hmm.
so the muscles can't repair. So they just turn all that damaged tissue into scar tissue, which eventually makes the muscles stop moving.
Okay, so how old was he when you got diagnosed with that, and how long ago was that?
He was only 5.
Okay, and how old is he now?
He's 23 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So you've been living this for quite a while.
Yeah.
How has that led to where we are now?
So the reason I set up the charity was because I know from personal experience what we've had to go through to try and transport Lachlan.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel for those parents out in the community who haven't got the financial capability of buying one of these wheelchair vans
Mm-hmm.
to transport their loved one, because it makes a huge difference in their lives to have access to that vehicle and just know it's in the driveway and we can just hop in it and go wherever, out for tea, um, down to the shops,
Mm-hmm.
on holidays, or yeah, whatever.
The world's opened up to you a lot more when you've got your own vehicle sitting, waiting
Yeah,
for it to be used, just like any other family would have. Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit about the charity then. Tell us more about the charity and how it's got to this point and how old's the charity and give us more background about the Make Me Mobile charity that you've got going.
Um, Basically, it starts off. I had a stroke last year at Easter,
Mm-hmm.
and I was sitting around home recovering from that stroke and talking to my family. And my daughter says to me, "We should start a charity, Dad." And I said, for years, I've wanted to set up a charity that could raise the funds for these vans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I could never work out how, it's massive amount of money. How are we going to raise that sort of money? And she says to me, "You should use TikTok, Dad, and YouTube." She says, "People do stupid videos and raise millions for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we use those videos, use the same platform and make videos of families and what their troubles are, or what they've achieved
Mm-hmm.
with all the odds against them, and the money raised would go to supplying vans for the families."
Wow. So fantastic. So is she your TikTok editor? Is she? Does she do all the video?
No.
No, you do it all yourself.
Yeah, we're working on, we haven't really started making videos, but I've made a few myself,
That's how
for
that's how I got to that's how I got to see what you were doing, and
the website. Yeah.
it blew me away with what I saw I saw it on Facebook, and then I saw some things on YouTube, and I had to reach out and get in touch.
Yeah.
People are going to ask, why are you doing this when NDIS is around nowadays? Now, for your son Lachlan, I'm assuming that NDIS wasn't around when he was five,
No,
when it got diagnosed. Why? How does this work with the NDIS?
we actually moved to Albury from Queensland,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no NDIS up there when we left.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably up there now, but um, the NDIS has been great for Lachlan. They've provided him with a $50,000 wheelchair, um, heaps of supports down here. But unfortunately, the NDIS can't do everything,
Mm.
and they will supply the funding uh, for the modification of the van, but they won't do anything to help the families buy the van.
So I chose this picture behind me. If you're watching this one on YouTube, there's a picture. If you're not, I'll explain it to you. I've got a background picture behind me of one of our clients. She's got a very expensive wheelchair, and she's got a van, and it's got a turnout seat to allow her to transfer into the passenger seat, and then the carer puts the wheelchair in the back of the car. What you're saying there, Peter, is that NDIS will fund the wheelchair
Yep.
that's pictured behind me. they'll also fund things like a turnout seat or the
Yep.
modifications to the van.
Yeah.
But as pictured behind me, the client themselves or the family has to purchase the van. And just to give a bit of context, this person behind me, she can't go in a standard car. It has to be a van because of the
No.
size of the
No.
wheelchair and because of that turnout seat and the room required for that turnout seat to come out through the door. So she's got no option but to have a van as her mode of transport. So the vans are more expensive than cars, aren't they? You can't just buy
Yeah.
a little beat up hatchback. You have to buy something that's a bit more significant.
No. And the reason we're pushing to supply the Kia is the Kia. It rides really nicely,
Mm-hmm.
which is important for a client like Lachlan, where they're losing their muscle strength and their head bobbing and bumping around. You need
Mm-hmm.
a smooth ride. We've had a Toyota commuter bus for the last 11 years, and we've done a few trips to Queensland
Yeah.
in it since, and the roads are shocking.
Yeah.
And in that van, because the van's made to carry like 14 people or something,
Yep.
and we've only got 4 in it,
Yep.
it's very bumpy.
Yeah, it's a commercial vehicle. That's the other thing that we work around a lot in this industry is that you're quite often going into a commercial vehicle, so it's designed
Yeah,
to take over a ton in the back.
yeah,
So even a little Volkswagen Caddy is designed to take a payload in the back of it. So they do have tight suspension to be able to take the increased weight in the backs of these vans. But you're right, the Kia Carnival, as an example, has a softer ride for family comfort. So it makes
yeah.
a massive difference.
And it's I think they're an 8-seater,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they take out the back row seats to put the wheelchair in, and they put a trench in the floor, and yeah, that and Freedom Motors do a absolutely uh, splendid job of making the van like a normal car. It might not seem important to everyone, but when you see a wheelchair van traveling down the highway, and you can notice that it's fitted out for a wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
at and you see another one, and you can't tell that it's fitted out for a wheelchair. That that means something to me, to to um to our family, um with special needs, because everywhere else you go you stand out.
Yep.
um you don't want to stand out all the time. You just want to be normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I I hear that regularly. And driving is one of those places where you can hide your disability and still participate in the community quite
yeah,
often because you've got this thing around you to mask the disabilities. And if we
mm,
can mask that really well with a well fitted out car that doesn't look like it has got ramps and accesses and all
yeah,
that kind of things in it, then you can fit within society without all those stigmas attached a
yeah,
little bit more easy. As much as we're trying to change the stigmas attached with disability, we know that they still exist at the moment. So
yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, no, they do a great job, and a shout out to Freedom Motors in Sydney. There's a couple of other
It was like,
organisations around Australia as well, but yeah, no, they do a great job there at Freedom for sure.
mm,
Um, so with the NDIS, you have to buy your own vehicle. They also put out a few provisos when they consider funding modifications for a van.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, or would you like me to talk about some of those NDIS guidelines for actual vehicles?
Um, I'm not. I'm aware of them because we've just gone through the process of applying for. Lockie actually got his NDIS funding for the wheelchair van modification in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and because of COVID and businesses trying to get back on track, it's taken till now
Mm-hmm.
to get back in the system.
Yeah.
So we've actually got a van coming in January, I think,
Yep.
for Lachlan's modification. So I'm aware from our experience, but I'm not really uh, fully up to date with all the NDIS requirements. Um, I think from what um, from I've got friends who are in the professional industry,
Mm-hmm.
like an IT and like his care manager, and they sort of keep me up to date with what will affect our charity. So
Yeah.
um,
So vans themselves, when they consider significant amounts of funding, like lowering floors and putting in that trench and putting in additional seat belts and putting in tie downs for wheelchairs and all those type of things, we're talking 30,000 plus, and it goes
yeah,
up
yeah,
from there significantly
yeah,
depending on need. Um, so they want to have a vehicle that is roadworthy according to their standards and going to
yeah,
last 5, 8, 10 years, depending on how much
yeah,
needs to be spent. So their NDIS have guidelines, and they include having a vehicle that is less than 5 years of age, and hopefully has a bit of a warranty as a first tick. And then after that, there's a lot of protocols that have to be met if the vehicle's older than that. So really, when we're talking about these really high expensive modifications to a van, the NDIS prefer to have a new or very near new vehicle to make sure
yeah,
that it's good value for money.
yeah,
So, and that gets expensive, doesn't it? So how
yeah.
much do you know how much a standard Kia Carnival costs?
A standard Kia, I think we can get into a Kia. We've allowed a little bit of extra,
Mhm.
but I think we can supply a Kia for about 55,000.
Yeah.
So when you put a $35,000 modification on the van, as you said, you want it to be reliable, and you don't want the client. I had a bit of experience with this myself. I had to take Lachlan to Melbourne to an appointment with his neurologist, and we just had the van looked at by Toyota, and I just left Albury and was flying down the highway, and I pulled out and overtaken a B double truck on the freeway, and then all of a sudden there was a big boof under my seat, and I lost all power.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to pull over to the side, and then I had to ring someone to come and get us. And my dilemma was, if it was just me, I could walk or hitch a ride, or but because I had a wheelchair in the van, I had to find some way of getting Lachlan back.
Mhm.
And Toyota were very good to us. They they the same person owns Toyota owns a hire company in Albury,
All right.
and so they sent out a tilt tray with a mobility van on the back,
Right.
so we could we could just transfer Lockie,
Mm-hmm.
and we could keep going to Melbourne, but by that time I reckoned we were too late for our appointment, so we just headed home. But you can imagine from a client's point of view, if they just spend all this money on a van to modify it, and they're flying down the highway, they're out in the middle of nowhere, and it breaks down on them.
Yeah.
How are they going to get home?
It's a very good point that you make, and a lot of people overlook those further details. Thinking beyond the immediate breakdown. If you're on the
Yeah,
highway in between major country towns, then yeah, you're right. You could jump in the back of any car that's going past if you don't have a wheelchair. But if you've got
yeah,
a high needs wheelchair, how are you going to get places? And
mm,
that would be a very expensive access cab, maxi taxi
it
ride
would
if you're
be.
out in the
Yeah.
middle of there. So it looks like you got out of a scenario rather well there, but it wouldn't be the same for everybody. But let's get back to, so we got the vehicles that are expensive. We've got expensive modifications coming into it. Tell us about the initiatives of the Make Me Mobile charity, and what are you trying to achieve with the charity? Let's focus on that charity. What are the key initiatives of the charity, and how can we help?
Um, the key initiatives of the charity is um, we're apparently the only charity in Australia that will supply the van fully funded to the client. Um, the client has um, the van is essentially their van, and we have an invested interest in the van. Um, this is where it gets a bit tricky and a bit heartbreaking, but um, if the client no longer needs the van for some reason, it's usually um, the nasty one, which is they've passed away.
Mm.
Um, we, as a charity, we want to purchase that van back again,
Mm-hmm.
to on supply that van to someone else who could use it. Um, the vans become very they come become very hard to buy in the public arena.
Mm-hmm.
They also become very expensive for a second-hand vehicle. So we want to change that um, scenario by buying the van back. Um, uh, I can't say too much at the moment,
Yeah.
but
The charity is
purchase it.
relatively new, isn't it, Peter? Like
Yeah, it's
we're
only
talking to
12 months
you.
old.
Yeah, we're talking to you in your initiatives and they're in the initial stages, and the reason why we're doing that from a Drive Able podcast point of view is that we believe in this charity, and unfortunately, Ali can't be with us today, but I know that he's behind this as well. He and I both think that this is a big hurdle for a lot of people. Is the affording of the van that goes with the modifications. It's fantastic that the NDIS will fund the modifications with the
Yeah, it
appropriate
is.
assessments and making sure that all of those tick boxes are met. Let's take into account that those things have been met and there is a need for the modifications to a van and they can be well supported by your driver trained OT. But then there's this big hurdle, especially if you're on a disability pension or
Yeah.
you're in a family situation where you can't work because you or can't work enough to be able to afford these type of things because you're taking care of your loved one.
Or you're a single parent.
Single parent, there's lots of
Yeah.
scenarios which impact on being able to afford $50,000 worth of vehicle. So your charity is about raising money
Yep.
to be able to afford the cars,
Yeah.
but then NDIS to do those wheelchair modifications too.
That's
I mean,
right. That's right. The NDIS deal with the client and deal with their need for the van. We try and stay out of that because it's not our industry. The Freedom Motors and the auto mobility people, they do the modification, and we stay out of that too. NDIS supply the funding for the modification. All we do is raise funding for the vans and supply the van to the client so it can be modified for them.
Yep.
And the rest is all done by the professionals that are in the industry. We just want to raise the funding for these vans and give them to the people who need them.
So where to from here, Peter? What's the future, and how can our listeners assist the Make Me Mobile charity? What do you need from us?
Well, we're also looking at a scenario where people could raise the funding. They could be more in charge of their own raising the funding for their own van. So we're currently looking at that with our lawyers and seeing how that could best work. So a person in Mount Gambier or something could Make Me Mobile would set up a GoFundMe for that client, and they could raise the funding in their local town with their community behind them, and we would drive a national campaign to keep supplying all the vans, and if the person, the client raising funding, say they come up $10,000 short or $20,000 short of their goal, then Make Me Mobile could top up the coffer from the national fundraising.
Yeah,
and they could reach their goal and have their van. So as far
can I just recap on all of that? That is absolute gold, Peter, and I think that's an amazing way to look at it for the future. Me personally, so if clients want to look at funding for their car, the Make Me Mobile charity is going to, in the future, give the toolkit to the clients, or give the toolkit to the family to go out and raise their own money, find ways to raise money in their own local community.
Yeah, we could supply ideas on how they could raise the funding. We could also give them support from, I won't say too much now, but we're looking at a deal with certain people that are everywhere in Australia. So we're only a very small charity, and we're only based in one town, but these people are all around Australia. So we're trying to come up with a deal with them to support. They be our eyes and ears of Make Me Mobile in the local areas, to raise, oversee the funding and the fundraising, so it's done in a professional manner.
Peter, I hope that you're ready to get really busy, because I feel like this is going to snowball for you, because we get this question all the time. Where can I can't afford the car. Have you got any hints? Have you got anything to help us afford the car? And I think that this is going to be something that really has an impact on people's lives in a positive way for the future. If we can help you get this initiative up and running, we will probably ask if it's okay with you to get you back on when all of these little elements are in place, and you can tell people about how they actually work. But we wanted to give you a Kickstarter to get the word out there. How can people find you? How can they get involved? What do you want from our listeners? How can our listeners be of assistance now?
Basically, if you hear of Make Me Mobile and manage to get hold of our details, I encourage all the listeners to share our details, and mainly our website is website's the key to getting the information out there. Share us on Facebook. We're on Instagram as well. Like, share, and follow our pages.
You're learning, Peter. Yeah, very good. Yeah. Well done.
I'm only new at this, but I'm getting there.
I can't wait to see you on TikTok. That's what I'm looking forward to. I think that'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
So put Make Me Mobile into the search engine, go to the website, and have a look at the information on the website. I've done that. I've gone to have a look. That's how I got in contact with you, Peter. There's lots of Kickstarter things on there, but I suggest to everybody that no matter when you hear this podcast, because we know podcasts hang around for years and years and years, make sure you put in the Make Me Mobile term into your Google engine or whatever it is that you use.
MakeMeMobile.org.
MakeMeMobile.org, and go and have a look. See if there's a way that you can get involved, whether it's a donation, or if you're a family, a client, a participant of the NDIS, and you really need a van that you can't afford. Go and check out the website and get in contact. And it's in the early stages at the moment. We understand that. But Peter, it sounds like you've got a lot of initiatives there that are going to make a massive difference to people's lives. And I congratulate you for taking a giant step and being as helpful as you possibly can.
Yeah, well, we're currently raising funding for our first van to roll off the truck or whatever it is.
Yep.
We're hoping to give that away in May, June next year.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to organise a black tie event where we'll have one or two of these vans on display for anyone who's interested to come and have a look at up close and personal with the van.
Mm-hmm.
You can see all its buttons and play with it. Whatever you want to do.
Make the ramps go up and down and and so on and so forth. Yep.
Like a lot of people, lot of people out there that might want to do something to help have never seen one of these vans and seen how it's modified, and so with this event they can get up close and have a look and see what we're trying to supply our clients.
Yeah, fantastic. And what we'll do is we'll put the contacts for the website in the show notes. So people, wherever you're getting this podcast, make sure you scroll down to the show notes, and we'll put a link into the Make Me Mobile charity webpage, so you can make sure that you go there. They might be able to find the details about the black tie event and so on and so forth.
Yeah, we try and update it regularly. So
yeah, and if you're on TikTok, make sure you go and have a look at Peter do a funny dance at some stage, I'm sure, in the future. Hey, time's flown. It always does. Before we ask you our final question, we want to ask you to stick around for that question. But before we do that, we want to acknowledge our sponsors one more time that make this show possible. A shout out to Mobility Engineering and Williams OT. I've learned a lot about the Make Me Mobile charity through this interview, and I hope that our listeners have learned even more. But before we go, we know that cars are more than just getting from A to B. You've explained that it's about getting to appointments in Melbourne. You've talked about going on family holidays and things like that. But what's a memory that you have in your car that means something special to you? What's something that you've done that's more than just getting from A to B?
So we were aware of Lockie's digress in his mobility. So we the only reason we could afford it was I had a business at the time. We could claim it off the business. We purchased a van, the Toyota Hiace. We purchased it in Perth. We lived in Maryborough in Queensland. So we flew all the way over there as a family, all four of us. We arrived there at 2 o'clock in the morning, stayed in a motel over the night, and went down the car yard the next day and picked up the van and drove it back. We drove it. I think it was 5,000 kilometers we did in 2 weeks.
Wow.
But we had a great time. We went down to Cape Lewin. We went on a treetop walk. Lockie was in he was using a scooter for mobility at the time. And every time Lockie went over one of these bumps on the walkway, it'd go like this.
Yeah.
My wife couldn't stay on the walkway because she was scared of it collapsing. We drove all the way across the Nullarbor. We kept ducking out to the Great Australian Bight to have a look. Took photos of us all standing on the edge of the Bight.
Yeah.
We stopped at Peterborough, and there's a train set up as a display on the way into Peterborough. You could climb in. I could climb in the engine and sit there and look like I was driving it.
Awesome. I know that train. I know where that is. Yeah.
And we named the van in Perth. We thought, what are we going to call it? And the conversation went to swans because the swan is the emblem for Perth.
Yep.
And I thought of Wayne Swan. He was a premier for Queensland a long time ago. And so he got the name Wayne.
Oh, geez.
and he's been Wayne ever since.
Very good.
Wayne's been a very good van, and we've hardly had any trouble with him. So except for that time on the highway.
But you're upgrading Wayne to a Kia in the near future.
Yeah. But Wayne now becomes our market van. So I'm going to be visiting, doing markets around the Albury-Wodonga area. So just getting out there in public and getting meeting people and telling them what we're all about. So Wayne will be involved in that now.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. A huge thank you to you, Peter. It was a wonderful interview. I hope that people listen to this. They want to help out, and the way that they can help out is to get in contact through the web page. Go and like you on Facebook. We'll put links in the show notes down below, so make sure that you go and check it out and share this interview with people that might benefit from this. So if you're an OT and you've got a client that wants to get modifications into a car, or you're a mobility expert who puts in the modifications into cars and or vans, I should say, and the clients are really struggling with that affording of the van, make sure they listen to this and get in contact with the Make Me Mobile charity. But also, let's spread this word so we can hopefully get some big sponsors on board for you as well, Peter. So thanks
There's
again.
one more thing. So I currently go around all the clubs up here and tell them about the charity.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I'm telling people is that Australia has a population of 26,000, 26 million.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if even half the population gave a donation of $10 to Make Me Mobile,
Yep.
we could supply 2,800 and something vans to the community, to clients who really need them.
Yeah. That's great. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to shout it out on here to keep me accountable. I'll be doing that and making a donation at the end of this podcast, Peter. So
Thanks
that's
very
me
much.
personally, and I'm putting my name out there to do that. And I'm hoping that some of our listeners will have the same idea to make a donation to the Make Me Mobile charity, makememobile.org. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, so we really appreciate your time. We really hope that this gets massively kickstarted for you, that you can get a major sponsor on and can really go a long way with this. I think that your initiatives for the toolbox, the kit, the package about raising funds in your own local community is an amazing initiative as well. And I really look forward to
definitely a step forward in helping these individuals take charge of their own lives. And yeah, and we'll be there to support them and help them and possibly top up their coffer if they need it. Yeah.
Wonderful, mate. Thank you very much for your time. Stick around, everybody.
Thanks, Brad.
Ali's not with me at the moment, but when I come back, we'll do our top 3 takeaways of what we've learned through this interview. Peter, thank you very much, and we wish you all the very best with the charity, and hopefully we can get you back on soon, and Definitely. You can tell us about how it's grown and what new initiatives are out there, or how people can benefit as you get bigger and the charity grows. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, I'm doing the 3 takeaways by myself. And here we go. All right, welcome back. In this section, we bring you our expert analysis and our top 3 takeaways from the interview. This is where we normally, Ali and I, provide our 30 years of joint experience in the industry, helping people with disabilities to drive and get out in the community in a safe and meaningful way. But this week, it's just me because unfortunately, Ali hasn't been able to join us. But the top 3 takeaways, number 1 is we want to recap on those NDIS guidelines. So the NDIS guidelines are all about value for money, making sure that 1, the client needs the modifications to a vehicle, that there's no better alternative. So if they live in a city centre and they're really only commuting 5Ks a day and there's lots of taxis available, maybe the NDIS will look at that and say there's better options available. But if we're looking to use the car as a family and get out and about and do all kinds of adventures, like Peter traveling from Perth to Queensland, going on big adventures as a family, then that value for money is going to be assessed in a different way. And more than likely, the modifications, if you've got a good OT doing those funding applications for you, they should get approved. But to go with that, you need to have a vehicle. And the NDIS has guidelines in regards to vehicle modification. So if you put in Google NDIS vehicle modification guidelines, you can follow all the links on there, and you can go and read about the most up-to-date guidelines. At the time of this recording, they're looking for cars that are less than 5 years of age. If they don't meet those criteria of less than 5 years of age and doesn't have a warranty underneath it, then you need to go and have a local assessment of the vehicle. So when we're talking about local government authority, we're talking about RAAs, we're talking about NRMAs, we're talking about RACQ. No, I can't remember what it is in other states, but we're looking at that local identity to do an independent assessment of the vehicle. And then NDIS will look at the quality of the car to see if it's value for money for installing it. But just want to highlight again that if we're talking about major modifications to a car, like putting in a lowered floor trench for the wheelchair to go into, putting in tie downs, putting in new seat belts, going through all the rigor of making sure that it's still a roadworthy vehicle, we're talking of $30,000 plus. So it's a major modification to a car, and therefore they're going to be looking for a car that's going to last more than 5 years, more than 8 years, and be good value for money. Vans of that age are expensive. So new vans are very expensive to buy. And we talked about the Kia Carnival of being 55,000 or more to be able to buy off the shelf. So if you're on a disability pension, it can be very hard to afford those. If you're a single parent, if you've got other expenses, it can be very hard to afford a car of that money. So it puts people in a really difficult situation. So that's why we got the Make Me Mobile charity on, and they're looking to fill that gap, to give people tools to go out and raise their own money, and also raise money to help top up people's fundraising that they're doing for themselves. So that's our second takeaway. The Make Me Mobile charity is about helping participants and their families to raise their own money and raise extra money to be able to afford these cars. So they're designing toolkits, and we're going to get Peter back on to discuss the toolkits that are available to help you start your own GoFundMe page, to ideas to raise money around the community for vehicles, so on and so forth. So number 2 takeaway is go and check out the website. Go and check out the Make Me Mobile website. Go and ask questions about those initiatives as they roll out. They're very new charity. We understand that. They're only 5 months old. They're in the infancy of raising money and putting these things together. But we wanted to give them a kick start and get this ball rolling, because I know as a driver trained OT that I get this question all the time about how can I afford this car? And a lot of clients, unfortunately, they disappear into the ether. We know that they need these vehicle modifications, but they take the opportunity to not drive because it's too hard to afford a vehicle. So alternatively, this charity is out there to try and fill that gap. And I congratulate Peter and his family for putting this together. So please go and support it. And that takes us on to point number 3. Peter made the point that if only half the population of Australia was to donate $10, 2 cups of coffee in this day and age, they could raise $13 million, and that would afford a bunch of vehicles. It would really make a massive difference to people in the NDIS world that can't afford their own vehicles. I've just done it. In that break between the interview and doing our top 3 takeaways, I've gone and made a donation. I've gone and done that. So I've kickstarted it for everybody. made a donation on behalf of the Drive Able podcast. I'm hoping that if you listen to this, you go and do it too. Make sure you go to the Make Me Mobile charity page. So makememobile.org. You can easily click the links down below to make a donation on that first page. It's really easy to do through credit card or a bank transfer. They give you all the details on there. If you could help support this charity, it's going to make a massive difference to all of our participants in the NDIS world who can't afford the cars for those vehicle modifications that they really need. All right. That's it. Sorry, Ali couldn't be with us today, but as we wind up this episode, we just want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Again, Mobility Engineering and Williams OT for helping you bring this interview with Peter today from Make Me Mobile charity. Williams OT does driver assessments and rehab and offers all the pieces of the puzzle to assist people with disability needs reach their driving and community mobility goals. And Mobility Engineering is a team of passionate and dedicated people focused on bringing Australia's largest range of suitable transport solutions for all walks of life. As Ali and I always say in every episode, the advice provided in this podcast is general in nature. So if you've got any queries about what can work for you and what you can do to get out and about in the community, make sure that you get in contact with your local OT or mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial, because trials really do put you in the driver's seat. And make sure that you go and check out the makememobile.org webpage. And if you can afford it, please make a donation and make a difference to a lot of people's lives and help them afford those vehicles and hopefully get out and about in the community just like everyone else has the opportunity to. All right, that's it for now. See you in the next episode and take care, everyone. Bye-bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.